What's up, guys? Episode 2. How you doing, Jacob?
I'm doing pretty good, man. How are you?
Oh, I'm living life. Last episode, we did a quick intro to ourselves and went over Lancaster and new installations to Vegas. This episode, we're going to be doing how we set expectations to the indoor season, outdoor season, how we applied to practice, and application at the actual event. So, if you want to kick off for you, Jacob, setting expectations. Typically, I would say for me, it's in October, November. That's when I try to get like a firm setup in my bow, for indoors at least. So I'll take off all of September, majority of October, really just picking up a day or two a week, late October, and then by mid-November I like to get a setup rolling. But how do you set expectations themselves for going into the indoor season?
Yeah, so pretty much what I do is about the same time frame. I'm kind of setting up my indoor setup. I'll pull my last year setup and um, pretty much just go through that and kind of see, all right, what did I change throughout the season? Does it still feel good? Do I need to kind of adjust holding weight, draw weight, like basically the minuscule things? Because you already had the setup pretty much dialed in for past indoor season slash outdoor season. If you are shooting the same bow, like myself, I usually probably set up the same bow, just because I went all indoor season pounding it out, and then just transition to outdoor target is like maybe you just need to make finesse adjustments to your holding weight or something just to keep you honest in the wind, or something like that with USAT, or with your field archery going and shooting the angles. Maybe your draw length was changed just a little bit. So I pretty much about October, which is also hunting season for us here in Michigan. So between hunting season and everything, I'll set aside about 2 to 4 days a week that I'm in the indoor range, and I'm basically picking that bow apart and just saying, like, does it feel good? Does it still pound? Does it, do I need to move that draw length back out? Do I need to kind of adjust my holding weight accordingly? Stuff like that. So, and I'll basically just shoot game after game after game and kind of feel out the hold with my bars and see if it's sitting correctly. Um, and that's pretty much it. That's how I set the expectations. And then it's about end of November when we start getting kind of like indoor local tournaments around here going. So maybe I'll go to one or two of those before, obviously, the Hoosier 690 is the beginning of December. So I try to just apply tournament pressure early, but that's pretty much what I do, because I don't like to change setups unless I have like another bow that's sitting there and I want to build it from scratch again. So I kind of take the previous setup and maybe new strings and just tightens and stuff up a little bit.
Yeah, I'd say it's about the same for me. I do a lot less shooting early on in the season. When I was in college, I was on the archery team there. I shot collegiately for ooh, 5 or 6 years probably. First at Atlantic Cape Community College and then Penn College. Um, I would say at Atlantic Cape, I shot about 2 days a week, early season to 3 days a week. But when I was at Penn College, I shot pretty much every day, starting in August, all the way through the year, every single day. And for me,
Dang.
like every day, as in we had the range open Monday to Thursday, and I would pick up an extra day on the weekend. So for me, it was practically every day. And for me, it doesn't work at all. I get burnt out too quick. Especially me, like I shoot a lot of arrows already doing field archery. So, and I would shoot 2 or 3 full field rounds a week outside of a tournament. So I needed that break this year. I just wanted to try it because I hadn't done it in 4 years probably. So starting like once NFAA Field Nationals ended, I pretty much I had 2 more outdoor shoots. Then I stripped the bow apart, set it up for indoors, like a really quick setup, and then just put the bow away for a while. I got my hunting bow set up, and then went out a few times and tried like every Saturday. And then
Yeah.
about beginning of October to mid October, I found a league where it was just Thursday nights, and I would only shoot Thursday nights, and that was it. And
Ooh.
for a while, I was like, man, I'm not too consistent right now. Um, and I was like, it was a 450 league, so it'd be like a 47, 49, mid 30x. And I was like, one day a week, it's all right. And then November, I would start ramping it up. I'd get 2 days a weekend or 3 days a weekend at times. I would have to guarantee minimum 60 arrows. Like, that's the bare minimum. Pretty much every shoot we go to 60 arrow minimum for the most part, depending on the round. But that is like I had to at least reach that, including practice if it was a 450 league. So I would get an extra 5 ends in. And as far as equipment, typically like rest wise, I've always ran like a standard 10 blade. Like this is my tried and true. I'll tinker with D-loop lengths from outdoors to indoors. I'll tinker with draw length a little bit just because, how you were saying, with field or Mark 3D, the angles. For me, I like a tad shorter for outdoors for that reason. This way I'm not creeping outside. Then indoors, I'm okay with running it like a tad longer. Kind of the Dave Cousins trick. Um, so he runs his a touch shorter, like an eighth or 16th shorter. I don't know the specific measurement that I do. I couldn't tell you what my draw length is right now. I just go based off feel.
Oh, come
So
on, man. You don't have a ledger somewhere,
no, I
just with
think
all your notes?
the last I remember my true draw was like 29 or 28 and a half. That's changed so many times now. So I'm putting a new set of strings on pretty soon, so I'll know by then. um, but yeah, so that's pretty much what I do. I run the same arrow setup pretty much every year. I don't really change that a whole lot. Uh, Pretty much the same 6 arrows, same veins and everything.
It's kind of
I
hard
think.
to change arrow setups once you have a good, solid, because in all reality, you sit there and you're like, okay, what length is perfect? Whether you walked it in by cutting a quarter inch off, you messed with point weight once you got it to the perfect length. So I agree with you. It's kind of hard to kind of say, oh, well, I want to build a whole new 6 arrows or a dozen and pick my final shafts that I want to use.
and and two,
So
like
yeah,
if
I'm
they
with you on
worked
that one.
last year, and if they worked last year, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And for me, the only things to fix
Right.
are when you're transitioning, D loop length, draw length. Maybe you can tinker with holding weight. We were talking about this before the pod about like how it feels.
Yes.
Some people are different. For me, it's also shooting the Supra, how it has the adjustable mod stop for the let off. I do it for draw length as well.
And that's very
So
helpful in itself too,
mhm,
because all you're doing is you're just moving it one little mark. I
mhm.
shoot prime, and I'm able to move that stop every which way I want to kind of hone in exactly that feel. So I'm with you on that one as well.
and and for me, honestly, my draw length change is I'll shoot 65% for field, and then that shortens it up a little bit, and then I'll move it to 70% for indoors. So
Mhm.
outdoors, I'm getting about 19 and a half, 20 pounds of holding weight, and then indoors is about 17 and a half, 18.5%.
Yeah,
Depending if
that
the break.
5% helps keep you honest.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's pretty much just why I like it for field. For indoors, I want to be as relaxed as I can, and it being short, shooting just flat doesn't help me. Like tend to creep a bit more.
Mhm.
And pretty much any national event you shoot, you're gonna have a decent bit of inclines and declines. So
Oh yeah,
I like it for that reason.
especially out in Mechanicsburg, they got
Yeah,
some hills.
yeah,
That's for
they had
sure.
some pretty interesting hills, a lot of like side slants and everything. So
Not saying
dealing with
that
a
Washington or Yankton doesn't. Just
mm,
last time I shot Mechanicsburg, that there was one target I remember I was pretty much at a 45, and I'm like, ooh,
yeah,
all right, here we go.
yeah, and I think Yankton, from what I've
Yank,
heard, is pretty flat, but they build stands to make the angles, which
you
is pretty cool.
have I think I know for sure you have one real tall one.
Mm.
I guess is what I would say is tall. I was gonna say big, but the height on that one is pretty big. And then you gotta after you're done shooting that, you gotta come down and then you shoot flat.
Mm.
So it brings some extra arrows because
Yeah.
there was a couple guys shooting right through their carbon shafts. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's about like I want to say like 3 elevated stands out
Mm.
there that you shoot from, and obviously it's different. Which don't quote me. I'm not saying they exactly have this many. I'm just saying like from what I remember, there was only 3 I remember shooting off of. There could have been more, could have been less. Um, but the different rounds take into account for what course you shoot, obviously what target you shoot, and if you're going to get on that elevated platform or not. So,
Yep. Now, for setting expectations, how do you do that mentally? We were talking a little bit about gear-wise, which arrow-wise, rest-wise, it's kind of like you kind of know what you know at that point after
yeah.
doing private archery for so long. Um, the only thing, that, at least for me, that really changes, is, draw length and everything. Loop length. What do you change mental approach year per year, or do you kind of set the standard the same way? How do you go about that?
It's pretty much a going through practice. It's more of confidence building. It's more of sitting there saying, okay, I'm going to put myself in certain situations, like how you shadow box, or like when I wrestled in high school, you shadow wrestle. You're doing moves. It's kind of that way. Is in practice, I kind of will put my mind in certain situations. I know not all people can do that, but if you're able to, I kind of basically go into it saying like, oh, okay, like I'm shooting a game and it's say I'm already on the 7th end of the shoot or something like that, and or my practice round, and I basically say, okay, this is last day Vegas finals, and I kind of put my mental state into that of what it would kind of feel like. Obviously, it's not going to be exactly because you're not there. You obviously can look around and say, oh, I'm at my club. It's not that, but if you can mentally hone in on just the target and change your mindset, that's kind of what I see with my shots, is if I can execute a good shot under that type of pressure. And then like money shoots, we call them smackdowns here in Michigan. So like over here in we have smackdowns throughout the winter, so I try to shoot as many as those as I can before I go to Lancaster, Vegas, or excuse me, any of the big tournaments, just to kind of help with that pressure. But in the mental state, it's kind of basically trying to figure out, if I put myself in this scenario, how do I perform? And then basically saying, okay, now what can I make the bow or equipment or myself do different to have a different result? So like if I shoot a low 9 because I'm like, oh, this is Vegas finals, I can't miss, and I pull up and I shoot a 9, okay, so what did I do? So I basically go through that aspect mentally of breaking myself down, because once you get I'm sure you'll agree with me on this, is once you get a really good solid archery setup, your arrows, bow, everything is shooting great, there comes a point to where, you sit there and go, okay, I know it's not my rig. I know it's not my setup. Even though we love, as archers, we love to blame the equipment, sometimes we got to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, you're the problem.
Yeah.
You're a real problem. So I kind of do that in a sense of, once I get that bow set up exactly the way I want it to, I kind of nitpick myself of like, okay, if I do this, what is that result? And that kind of goes into the forgiveness of a bow. And like, if I purposefully don't put forward pressure, or I purposely am loose in the back half, like creeping, or I'm letting my hand kind of jiggle, or I drop out of my shot. What is the end result? To build forgiveness. So, and that goes into the mental aspect as well, is because once you start getting a setup that's hitting that X, or the center at 50 meters, or that field target, the X at 80 yards, or even Mark 3D, you're putting arrows in at over 100 yards. What is that setup doing when you make that little mistake? So I kind of will run through that with myself as well.
Mm.
How do you feel about that? What do you do with that?
No, I agree. I think for me, when I don't score a lot of rounds, to be honest, when I practice, I try to set the practice as just elimination rounds. Vegas obviously a little bit different. NFA Indoor Nationals is a bit different, but the first big one of the year is Lancaster. So when I'm prepping for that, it is every single end is an elimination round. So if I'm scoring a 300 round, I don't really write down the score. I just imagine, okay, if I'm shooting off against this guy, like I always like image a pro because the aspiration is to become a pro one day. So I'll take you or
You think of me?
You're good, man.
Man, my heart. I'm
kidding. You're on the prime time pod for a reason. But I'll take guys like you, Levi, Reitzma, Dylan Thompson, any of the guys who are consistent in that bracket of archers, and I say, okay, if I want to make it there, these are some guys I'll have to beat. And there's plenty of more guys. Braden Gillantine.
Oh yeah, Braden Gillantine,
Lawson,
Glenn Bordwell, Louis Price, Jimmy Lutz.
Mm-hmm. There's a ton of them. Like the amount of guys that don't make it in that cut that easily should be there, but it's only a 64 cut. Like it's insane. But I try to imagine, okay, if I want to be there in there, I need to be able to shoot a head-to-head. Because this year Lancaster, 129s, I think I shot 129 every single match. That doesn't cut it in the pro class unless it's like a weird match,
Oh yeah.
And I've only seen that like a few times, but with where that was like 5 years ago or 4 years ago, now if you're not shooting basically a 132 or a 131, you're done.
Pretty much, yeah.
And that's how it is. So I used to get extremely nervous with elimination rounds. And that's because I never really practiced it. There was the occasional money shoot that I would go to in the local area. But if you're not setting the mental state for, I need to shoot a 132, 131, 130 to even be in it, then it's a weird experience for the first time. So this year, I kind of changed my approach. So every time I shoot at league or on my own, even though if I'm not scoring, and I really try not to because I don't personally like knowing where I'm at. I try to imagine I'm trying to beat the guy next to me, or I'm trying to beat the guy on whatever line they're on, and that's kind of how I treat my practice for leagues.
With you not scoring, you could basically say like you're there to work, but at the same point in time, you're focusing on yourself.
Yeah.
Because, just take caveat off of what you just said is once you start scoring, your mind goes totally different from working on yourself and working on that shot process to I have to hit that X. I have to be perfect. So with that, kind of explaining it to where when you go to practice, it's pretty much I'm focusing on my shot process and what feels good and seeing what the end result is. Yep. And if I need to adjust anything, would you say? Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. And for me, I think everyone can say it, and I might have briefly went about it on the last episode, but I have always shot better and everyone has experienced it when they're driving, like long drives, where you're just going autopilot, and it's like, did I stop at that red light? Did I stop at that stop sign? Whatever. And the ride feels like it was 5 minutes when it was a couple hours.
Oh, yeah.
When I shoot best, I'm in that state. So how I train now is I'm focusing on my shot process, but I'm focusing on hitting that center every single time, and that's when I get my best results. I have in a Lancaster this year. It's been happening at league a lot. We had briefly talked about it before. I was at league this past week, and I would have shot 450 with 43 X's. But the last arrow, I broke that process and I had to shoot it. Not ideal, but that was by far the best round I've ever shot before, feel-wise, even better than at Lancaster.
Right. And just
because
because you shoot...
I went in a zone on autopilot. I knew what process was working at the time. I was like, okay, that feels good. And I just focused on, I need to beat a guy. And I put them in my head. It's like, okay, they're going to go toe-to-toe with me, arrow for arrow. I need to be on my game. And that's how I have mentally set myself up for indoors. And I'm going to be doing the same thing for outdoors. And I think if you focus more on... It's where I see a lot of guys in the amateur class can sometimes, I wouldn't say fail, but it doesn't work as well
falter.
When you see the results.
We'll just say falter.
Is when you see the scores for certain people, they focus so much on that 600 qualifying round, then you see these weird breaks and eliminations where it's like the top guys are falling, or the lower guys that should be in the top are in the lower seeds in the bracket. Where it's like, I don't know for sure, but if you don't practice that head-to-head and you're just focusing on 60 arrows getting through it, then that's where the issues come in. And that's where you see issues when it comes to Vegas. Guys that shoot 300s all the time, X count doesn't matter technically at Vegas. But if you see the guys that shoot 300s all the time and post them on Facebook, and then you go to Vegas and they shoot a 9 with their first arrow, they're only focusing on getting the 300. Okay, well, I'm going to focus on every X I can get. Because I think Glenn Boardwell or Luke said a podcast, aim small, miss small, in regards to the 12 ring at Lancaster. So I'm going to focus on that X as often as I can. And that's where that mentality works for me.
Good. And kind of backpedaling a little bit in what you said with you, that one of the best rounds that you shot mentally and score-wise or, X-wise in a little while on a 450 round, you didn't give up when you shot that 9. You didn't sit there and, degrade yourself into saying, oh, well, that sucked. I suck, and that goes into the mental aspect as well. Like, I remember you texting me about it, and you're like, yeah, I shot this, and I'm like, that's good, and you were upset with the 9, but you weren't really like, you weren't, it's hard to explain, where you were just like dogging yourself, which you weren't. And that's something that I would say to everybody is like, just because you shoot a 9 or just because you shoot a 5 or whatever, on your, could be your last arrow, could be your second arrow, could be, heck, fifth end, after you switch targets or whatever, could be at Vegas, could be at Lancaster, you're still shooting. Focus, refocus, and just say, that happened, I can't get that arrow back. And that's a good mental state to have as well. Is like, you make a bad shot, and I've always had this mentality, and this is when I used to coach, or if I have somebody that I'm shooting with or whatever, they might miss the X-ring on the 5 spot, and it could be their third arrow, and they got 2 arrows left. The best thing that I tell anybody is the best comeback, you miss one and you plug it the next one. That is more of an accomplishment than any 330X, because you sat yourself down, had a mental break basically, and said, hey, that happened, so be it, I'm plugging the next 2. And you plug the next 2 and you move on. Yeah, in the pro class, you miss one, you're pretty much done. Vegas-wise, Lancaster, Lancaster's a little bit more lenient because of, the scoring is 11. But indoor nationals, it is cutthroat with that scoring, because you miss that X, you're not moving to the shoot-off in the pro class. So it's kind of hard for that, but we're up on the pro class, on the pro line, we miss one, we're still shooting.
Yeah.
And we're basically saying, okay, how many IOs can I get now? Like, I'm done. I'm going to focus on something way smaller, kind of like what you were just saying. So that is in itself, like, just because you miss, don't degrade yourself. You could have had a great round to where that's the highest X count you've ever shot. Look at that. Look at the positive. Like, okay, reset yourself and say, okay, what happened on that arrow where I missed? Once you figure that out, move on. And you're like, look towards the positive. Oh, shoot, I just had a personal best of my X count. Or I just had a personal best on my score. You know, for somebody starting out shooting the 5 spot, you know, they're searching for that 300. You know, you have to give yourself credit where credit is due. Mm-hmm. And that's basically what I want to kind of point out is, like, don't degrade yourself to the point to where you talk yourself out of you worked good, you shot good. Like, your mental state, you know, using you as an example, your mental state was on point, and it just faltered for a second. And you knew what happened, but you moved on. And you just said, that I shot a really good X count, really good score. Wish I had that 9 back, but, you know, I'm going to work on it, and I'm going to plug them the next time, you know. Mm-hmm. So
I think it's important, too, to stay the course and stay humble in a way, too. Because for me, the past few years, I've shot very poorly at national events. It really wasn't until this year when I really applied this new form of training. And last year at Lancaster, I didn't make the cut. I was shooting 650 plus rounds in Lancaster scoring, and you know, I was talking a big game, all that kind of. I was getting cocky in a way because I was like, "Hey, I'm going to be on that stage," because like it's been a dream of mine. And you know, when you shoot like a 632, 36, whatever it was I shot, that won't make the cut, or you're going to be dead last in that bracket.
Yep.
And even then, when you get that point, it's like I don't even want to be there at that point. I don't want to stay the extra day. And the pretty much that's what it gets to when you know the type of caliber shooting you can do, and when it came.
It's very degrading.
Yeah,
to yourself.
Like you get to be in the show, but you know, an amateur now, first place out of qualifying is 655 plus now. So it's like, I don't even want to bother going because you're already defeated as is. I don't want to go embarrass myself. Those are like the initial thoughts that come to mind when I was in that situation 2 years ago. I was like the 56th spot, and I was like, I shot I had 2 9s that year, but my X count was terrible. And I shot like a 640, which makes it in the amateur class. But I had to shoot off against Hunter Garrison, who I think won it that year or whatever it was. And I know he's a great shooter. I was like, I don't want to be here. And then this year, when I really tried to apply this new mental game and strategy towards practice, it was like, you know, if I want to win the Classic or I want to make the stage, I need to beat guys like Hunter Garrison, guys like you, Levi, Thompson, the Guillotines of the world, Matthias, Stefan Hansen. I need to be able to go head-to-head with those guys for me to make it through an amateur division, which has a lot of depth. Qualifying-wise, you know, you clearly have the guys in the top, and then you get a lot of mid-40s and high 30s. But if you want to make it, anything can happen before it ends there. Anything. The first place guy shot a 656 this year. He got knocked out second round, which it was like, that's crazy because you don't expect to see it. So you need to be able to go toe-to-toe with anyone that you're shooting against. And obviously, like EJ does this thing, you need to be 1 point better than that guy. That's not how mentally you should think about it because then you get sloppy. For the audience at home, obviously that makes more sense. But in the archer's mind, in my mind, I don't want to be just 1 point ahead. I want to be 2 or 3 ahead to make sure, I'm going to, when I do it here, I can do it in the pro level. And bouncing back to, you know, don't get defeated. The week before Lancaster this year, I shot at Ram Archery in Pennsylvania and Outdoor Insiders in Pennsylvania, 2 big money shoots where, like, the Boardwells go there, John Scott, Louis Price wasn't there this year, but he'll show. Um, and there's a lot of big shooters that go there. Nate Sellers, he was also on the stage with me this year. And I had a 323 at Ram, and I was just focusing on 300, and then you see the decline in X's. And not really thinking about how I had practiced all year, thinking of eliminations. I shot like a 123, and eliminations got knocked out, which doesn't cut it at all. Then the next day, I shot 317 because I was just so aggravated about the day before.
Ooh.
And a weird X count. I had like 24 X's. It was a weird X count. But then I shot off against Glenn Boardwell. He was the first seed, and I was the last seed in Flight 1. And I shot 131 or 130 against him. He cleaned it, so, shout out to Glenn for making me leave early. But, that's when, it flipped. I was like, okay, I know what I was doing wrong the entirety of the weekend. And I was able to apply it for the following weekend. So, keeping process in mind, sticking with what works is two very crucial points when it comes to practice and
100%.
how you apply it to the local level, and getting into the application side of it. You need to be able to replicate it, which is why if you can make as many local shoots, whether they're for money or not, if you know good shooters are going to be in attendance there, just go. You might lose, that's fine, because great Dave Cousins quote, in case you guys haven't realized, I'm a big Dave Cousins fan. He did an old video at Prime where they followed him up to Reading, and a little bit of his background. And one of the quotes on it I have written down on a 595 feet around indoors, which was my best round. Shot that when I was 18 or 19. It was, from what I remember, you're going to lose way more than you're going to win. When you win, embrace it, enjoy it, and then apply it to the next one. But when you lose, just learn. And that's all you can do. Archery is a learning game. We all lose. I lost a lot of events leading up to this year, and I even lost on the stage, but I got to learn and take that experience so I could apply it towards next year. So that is a big building block. And for you, how would you say you've experienced that and how you would tend to apply it?
So I'd have to say is going home after being defeated, or losing. I'll just say losing, not defeated, because we're not defeated. And kind of like what I said before is, just because you lose, don't beat yourself up. Don't say, I'm defeated, and get in that mindset, because you can always go home and you can change it. But I learned at Lancaster this year. New bow. I was still dealing with the mental blockage, like I covered in episode 1, where just things weren't just adding up. And I had a lot of bad habits from the years of shooting before, and started working with Devin Wilcox, a local guy here that has, helped me in archery since I was a kid when I started. And he pretty much was like, we're breaking these bad habits now. So, and he was like, we're going to get you ready for Lancaster. So Lancaster, I learned tremendously of just that feeling. And what feeling I'm talking about is you're on the line and you're not shooting the best, but you still stay up there. And I basically told myself, I said, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to actually figure this out. And I'm going to shoot, and I'm going to go through my process. What is my process? What is my body telling me? I'm a big emphasis on your shot process needs to feel right. And that feeling, you need to replicate that feeling. I think I've said that to you plenty of times, is that good shot, that one good shot, and it's, we'll talk about the Vegas face. It hit the baby X, and it is absolutely inside out. So perfect that they could put hands on it and sell it as a clock. What did you do on that shot? How did it feel? So I had to break myself down at Lancaster, and I knew I wasn't going to make the cut. I already was just I was watching my scorecard, and I'm just saying, yep, nope, okay, we're done. All right, we're just here to have fun. So pretty much watching that is degrading as well to yourself. But at the same point in time, I didn't give up. I just sat on the line and I said, okay, I'm going to focus on, okay, what feels good? What is my shot process trying to tell me? Because literally 4 weeks before that is when I started. Well, I won't say 4 weeks. It probably was a little bit before that. Was working through breaking these bad habits. And the first thing that I had to come up with terms is I had a problem. I had bad habits that I needed to break. That was the first thing that Devin had to look at me and say, "You are doing this. You have to accept it before you can move on." You know, you can't sit there and say, "Oh no, it'll pass." You know, I'll work it out myself. You know, it takes sometimes that person that you trust to sit there and say, "No, you need to accept that we need to break this bad habit."
Yeah.
So, Lancaster was a very huge learning curve, and talking about, not making the cut, and like what you said earlier is like you just want to go home. You want to go home and you want to work at it, and but you know what? I went to the Prime booth and I sat at the Prime booth, talked with a lot of people, talked with Tim Chekarowski, which is another fellow Prime pro. He's also the pro staff coordinator for Prime. So the boss man, our boss man.
You can really tell Jacob shoots for Prime.
Prime time, baby. Prime time. It's Prime's time, okay? All right. If you don't have a Divide 37.7, get one. So I sat at the booth with him. I shot Thursday. I sat with him on the booth on Friday. I didn't, compete on Friday. And I just kept seeing my name just go down and down and down. More as the day went on, when more pros would have to shoot because the line times you had, you had like 2 or 3 on Thursday, and then you had 3 on Friday for the qualification. So I shot mine last line on Friday, and then basically Thursday I shot my last round on Thursday, and then on Friday I basically just was watching the scores and seeing, if anybody shot perfect, because I'm still rooting for the guys that haven't shot yet. But I'm getting off topic. Coming back is I just sat with him, kind of talked with him a little bit, and he asked me, what's feeling good, what doesn't? What are you going to change on the bow? And I said, it's not the bow. I flat out, if I had him on the podcast today, he would basically sit there and say, yeah. He just looked at me and said, no, my problem's me. So basically about the afternoon line, when the afternoon line started and people were coming out of the practice range, I went back to the practice range, just posted up a target, and I didn't score. I pretty much was just like, okay, what feels good? Like, yeah, the lighting is different from over on the final stage, not the final stage, but the qual stage, where we actually shot. And, I didn't move my sight, but I just was testing out form. I was testing out, okay, am I faltering back to my bad habits, or am I actually staying with my new form, my new shot process, my new mental state? Am I following through? And what do you think the result was?
Probably pretty good.
No, it didn't, actually. It went good once I actually figured out, because I faltered back to my bad habits. And I was overextending myself. Which constitutes for my front shoulder to dip, and I just was blowing them out the bottom, or I was heeling it out the top.
Yeah.
I grabbed a new target and I posted it up, and I only shot a half a round, but I only missed 2 X's.
Yeah.
After that. So I was initially like, okay, why is it so hard for you? Me talking to myself was, why is it so hard for you to accept this new process? What is the mental blockage? of fighting change, I guess, is kind of the way I would put it. And pretty much my Instagram post, my Facebook post after the tournament is basically like, arrows flew, score didn't pan out the way I wanted to. I loved seeing everybody, got to catch up with you, got to catch up with all my prime teammates. I got to catch up with a lot of friends I have in the industry, and and I basically just said, I'm going home and it's time to get to work. So I had the mentality of, when I drove home is, I was rooting you on, but as well as me just sitting there saying, okay, when I get home, this is what I'm going to do. And missed the snowstorm, and it snowed a little bit here, but kind of once the roads got cleared, I actually got to go shoot, which I told you about that. I had to shoot for me to be able to practice at my range, we were running a local tournament, so I ended up shooting a local tournament with a 5-spot. And I trusted the process for the first time, and I would have to say that was where not the mental block like broke to pieces, but it opened up.
Yeah.
And kind of let me walk through is like, this is what happens when you trust the process. Yeah. Whether you have a coach or somebody or just a friend, saying like, hey, I'm doing this, can you watch this video? Or something, and you point and you nitpick, you nitpick the people that, because in all reality, like talking with you, you've sent me videos in the past, you've asked for advice, this and that, we both kind of fed off of each other of like, okay, when I do, me as a pro, I still ask people, using Matt as an example, is I still message him and say, if I do this should be my result, right? And sometimes he's got to set me straight and say, no, that's not what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. So when you feed off of each other, it's a good thing to have those types of friends in the industry because, whether it's you or me messaging back and forth and saying, hey, I'm having this issue. What do you think? Like I remember before Lancaster, your release was hanging up a little bit. Not a lot, but just
it always does.
But your release was hanging up just a little bit, and the only advice I remember giving you was just move that. You're shooting the abyss, so all I said was just move that head down just one peg. It allows your hand, and I went into it. It's like it allows your hand to kind of rest into a natural position, and then that just helped you have a little bit easier of a time to get that release to break. Mm-hmm. So it's awesome to have people that you can feed off of, and I just want to talk about that for a second. Coming back is we put $20 on the line for highest score at the local, and I ended up taking second with that because trusting my process, it still crept in. And it still was like shutting the door a little bit, like those old screen doors that are blowing in the wind. It was basically doing that. The mental block was just like, oh, I'll let you through a little bit. Ha ha. Screw you, dude. No. So actually, that was the first time where it opened up to where I could walk through and actually focus on my process. Yeah. So just because to answer, that's the long version of answering your question. But just because I go to a tournament, I'm not going to stop learning. Just like what Dave Cousins said. Is like, just because I have a bad day, a bad round, or just a bad practice session, it's like, okay, like I'm not going to sit there and keep on shooting and shooting and shooting in a practice session because then you're building bad habits back up. Mm-hmm. You have to sit there and say, okay, I shot my quota for the day. I'm done. Time to go home. And, I mean, my family, my girlfriend, everybody has looked at me and been like, well, how did archery go? And I said, it went all right. And they're like, you're being quiet. And I said, well, I got to run it through my head again. Like, what did I do? And that's the biggest thing with me is I have to recap it. I have to, think that process. So the next practice session, whether it's the next morning, the next afternoon, or 2 days from then, or whatever the case may be, I can apply with, okay, this is what I wanted to work on, so I'm going to focus on that. So, but yeah, that's how I kind of apply it. If I have a bad round at a tournament, whether it's a national indoor, national outdoor, or even just a local shoot, is okay. What did I do wrong? What was my mental state? Kind of like what you're saying. Did I falter in my mental state? But I just get right back to work once I get home, with what I learned from the tournament. So, but I like that quote. I think I need to write that quote down.
I'll send you the video. You can get the quote right from there. Knowing Dave, he is saying this on a bass boat. So that is the video. That man, he is on a bass boat.
That man loves to fish. I can tell you that.
Yes, he is a professional guide now. I think. But he still shoots
I think you're right.
I think he guides now too.
Yeah, he was at Lancaster. He was. He was shooting. I think he was shooting Friday afternoon. I think.
Yep. He was shooting a Hoyt Friday afternoon, and he almost made the stage again, man.
Yeah, he did.
That guy he's up there, I think, compared to like the guys in the Open Pro division, but he shoots like he's 20. It's insane. But yeah, there was one thing I wanted to go back on that you were mentioning, and then probably one more topic, and then a quick wrap up. But you had said, and I think it's important for all the youth. My dad would tell me this all the time, and obviously when you're young, you don't listen to your parents. But you need to enjoy it and ride the highest of highs, but you still need to do the same for the lowest of lows. And I remember going to when I was younger, R100s are a big thing, or IBOs, or if you're field or whatever it is, or indoors at a national or a local. If you have a bad day, don't let it ruin the whole day.
No.
And for all the people that want to go pro, or they're so driven on getting a sponsorship, it'll look a lot better if you shoot like crap and still represent well with a smile on your face and talk about the equipment well, and there's never the gear or whatever. There are a lot of people that'll just go blame the gear right away and bitch and moan about, it was such a terrible weekend, and just they obsess over it. I did it all the time. I was like that last year. I called you right after I shot, and I was like,
I did too.
I don't know what's going on. It was like the end of the world. And it's important for people who have the aspiration to go pro, or the people that are just so sponsor driven. I need a sponsor, or else there's no point in shooting archery, which is not the case, by the way.
No, it is not. There are actually quite a few pros this year. Mm-hmm. Just a caveat off of that, not trying to take your thunder. Just a quick note is that I know of at least four active pros right now that are unsigned shooting a bow, and they're still in the pro class. So you do not need to be sponsored or sponsor driven to be at that level. Once you find that equipment that works, run with it. Anyway, sorry, I just wanted to throw that in there to caveat of what you were saying.
Oh yeah, and I had a sponsor like years ago. The only sponsors I have now are Gold Tip and AAE. Shout out. But when it comes to like bows or releases, sights, etc., really like tinker. I wouldn't say tinker, but really find what works.
Yeah.
Like
try new things.
Try new things. I'm still trying to find something that like really works. I made the stage, but you're not wanting to settle for just making it there. You want to be able to raise your bow up above your head and say, yeah, I did that. And you want to get to that point where it's anything indoors, NFAA, Indoor Nats, Vegas, Lancaster, something outdoors. Ride, I think it's the Elk at Reading that they do that famous picture on.
Yeah. Yep.
Which Dave Cousins started, by the way. Another shout out to Dave. That was on a
hashtag get Dave on the Primetime podcast.
That was on a PSE podcast that they had started like 2 years ago. he had started that trend at Reading, so kind of a cool shout out. A lot of Dave this episode, I'm noticing, but
You're not don't worry, man. You're not fanboying whatsoever. Where you're like, oh, Dave Cousins, if you're watching this, man, like can I get a
but
T-shirt?
hey, he does have a Dave Cousins hat, I guess. So, but it is important to realize, when I was younger, I was very sponsor driven, and then you notice a lack in your game, and you notice it at local events or national events. But it's okay if you shoot bad to still have a smile on your face and have a good time. Because guess what? If you shoot bad and you don't have a good time and you make it a pity party, it's miserable and uncomfortable for the guys you're on a bail with.
Yep.
They don't want to deal with it. They don't feel bad for you.
No.
Because they're your competition. I shot with Braden Gillantine and Lawson this year at Lancaster, the first time I've ever shot with pros on a bail there. And if I shot bad, do you think they'd give a shit? No, probably not.
No.
I've seen Braden help people on the practice line, but they're in their own mental space.
Correct.
They need to focus because for them it's a job. For some amateurs, they treat it like a job. I want to get to the point where I could treat it that way, as like a full time. But you can't let it ruin, especially an entire weekend. If it's a local thing, they're typically just one-day events.
Yeah.
If you're going to Lancaster or Vegas, you're spending the money to go out there, don't ruin the entire weekend. Because guess what? Pros or sponsors can pick up on that real quick.
Yep.
And if you have a social media presence, they're really quickly going to find that. And then if you throw in if you have a resume of a bunch of local stuff and say, yeah, I really dominate the local area, which is good, but they know, okay, you don't represent whatever brand you're shooting at the time well. Why would we want you? Because you're not going to represent it when you have it for us. And that's an important note. Like you had said, this year at Lancaster was rough, but you didn't ruin the entire weekend. You can be disappointed.
Yeah.
You can be disappointed, but you can also have a good time. And that's an important takeaway. And still apply that to other. You can root on your friends. You said you went to the Prime booth. You still showed up at the Prime booth, even though it was a bad time. Because, I've known people who've shot bad at national events, and they just never worked their respective booths at all, and that's not good. It doesn't represent their brands well. So you need to be able to learn to suck it up and deal with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And especially if you see people that you feel like, oh, I can definitely beat them, like I can go toe to toe with them. Guess what? They had a better weekend than you, and you need to learn to let it go. You have other events in the future. Learn and apply to this one.
And you still, just my piece on that, we're getting, into the nitty gritty of it and how we feel, just like how, the description on YouTube channel and this podcast is, we get in the nitty gritty and the feels, but at the same point in time, you're still around your friends as well. That's kind of what I want to tell people is like, just because you had a bad weekend and just because like you in your own mind thought you sucked, you're still around your friends, you're still having a good time, and you're still there at the tournament. Soak up the experience. Like, that was the biggest thing that everybody taught me when I was younger. Because I wanted bigger expectations. I wanted higher expectations of myself. When I didn't reach them, I would totally just dog myself 100%, like what Matt was talking about himself. But it can basically just go to the point of let it go and focus on, the people that are there. Like me, Matt was still shooting. Matt was showing up and he was still shooting. I wanted to just watch him. I still had like 5 other friends that were going through. I went through, took pictures. Like, yeah, you're kind of putting yourself in the situation of you're not looking at the issue at hand and you're kind of replacing it with, the positive. Like, I'm there to support my friends now. Like, I'm done shooting. I'm going to support my friends, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to work on myself. But, yeah, root on your friends, and because some of your friends in archery are the best people in the world. Like, they'd get the shirt off your back, and that's why I love going to tournaments myself. So, like, don't let a bad weekend ruin, the going out to dinner and having a good time or something like that. At the tournament.
It's a true community family. Like there's people always there's gonna be like rotten eggs in the community, but overall it is like a true archery community. Um, Firsthand experience this year, I was having issues getting ready for the stage, and I had some issues with my knocking point getting undone, and some lady behind me, she was like, "I have a lighter, take it, do whatever you gotta do." I was like, "Oh, perfect, thank you." And she had said, and it was like one of the sweetest things. It was one of the sweetest things I've ever heard. She had said, her husband had passed away not long ago, and he had said before, he's like, rely on the archery community. It's a true community to use. So it is something important to remember when you go to these events, because you can meet new people and have a great time still, even if the weekend doesn't turn out the exact way you plan on it.
Exactly.
Sorry, we're doing little chats in our little chat box.
Little chat box, so bear with us. So yeah, we pretty much covered pretty much everything. We went over, just to recap, we went over the setting expectations for the season, what we kind of are wanting to focus on when we go to practicing for the upcoming season. Outdoor season goes all the way until August, pretty much right before elk season starts for you hunters is pretty much when we're about ready to be done. Is like the last 2 weekends of August, I would have to say, because you got USA Target Nationals and the U.S. Open, and then you got NFAA, the Dakota Classic, and Target Nationals. But then this year you have Field Nationals out there as well, but that's earlier in the year. Yep, in Yankton. And then we basically, how do we practice, the mental states of things. We, want to focus on our process when we go to practice, and kind of getting through to that is like, don't be fixated on score. Like, I need to go to the practice range and I need to shoot a 330 or a 360, or a 450 and 45, and the application of the season was what we wrapped up on, is like, how did we apply it to the line? How did we do with the, if we faltered a little bit, not letting it defeat us on the line, and how we kind of apply that. So that's kind of what we discussed today, but we're going to wrap it up here with one last talk. Is there was how do you say, Matt, like a post or a pretty big blow up on one of the Target Archery buy sell trade pages on Facebook, and I just want to cover it on that. If you know exactly what I'm talking about, I'm not going to say any names. I'm not going to say who was involved, just from what I watched. But just because there was a professional that was involved, not all professionals are that way. Me speaking from me personally, I would.
No.
Yeah. Hold on, man. I would not and do not condone myself in that behavior. The situation was there, and again, I'm not saying any names, I'm just going to go over the situation, is a professional archer was supposedly supposed to send a near mint bow that he used for the season to a customer that purchased it off of this page. And when that customer received it, it was not in the condition that was set by said professional. And it took off. There was a lot of conversations that were posted about it. There was a lot of comments. And there were some people out there, saying all pros are the same. I just want to say we're not. If I was going to sell a bow, I'm going to send all the pictures. I'm going to tell you exactly what I did to the bow. Matt has borrowed quite a few bows from me in the past. He might borrow one here in the future. And pretty much is like, I tell him exactly what I did, so he can either reverse it, or if he wants me to reverse it before I send it, I can do that. Not all of us pros are that way, and I just wanted to say that is there are some bad apples out there, the 1%, not even 1%, I would have to say the 0.5% of possibly shady people that have that happen to them is not condoning on the next, 99.5% of pro shooters. I just want to get on there and kind of say that with me personally, I would not condone that behavior myself. To me sending any product for that matter to anyone. So I just wanted to say that. Matt, do you have anything you want to say on that situation?
Yeah, you covered it well. I would agree, and obviously no one wants to get scammed or anything. I've been scammed before on
Same.
Facebook, and it happens. And I would say more of the time it's from amateurs or just scammers in general. But I've had issues with stuff from amateurs before and stuff from pros. I haven't dealt with many pros before, but I've had some good experiences and some not great experiences. But it doesn't mean that doesn't make all amateurs bad. It doesn't make all pros bad. So
No.
Just a brief comment, not getting too into it. If you wanted to find it, I'm sure you have. It is by far the most comments I've seen on a buy-sell trade forum before.
I think before it was deleted, it was up to almost 300 comments.
Yeah.
I want to say
deleted?
That's what I was gonna wrap up on. One last thing was the situation was resolved. The said pro did contact the person back, and there was a conversation. And the said person on the page did make a post to say that it was taken care of. He got his money back, and the situation was just out of hand. But said pro was not doing what he was supposed to be doing with making it right. So that's why the individual on the Facebook page posted it for following to get his money back. So so that I just wanted to say that situation is resolved. He did take the post down, so you will not be able to find that, unfortunately. But I'm sure a lot of people know of what took place. But
if you were there, it was a wild ride.
It was a very wild ride. There was a lot of comments to sift through, but there was a lot of pros that hopped on there. I can't say that I was one of them because I stay out of that type of stuff. But that doesn't represent all the pro class or all the amateurs that sell anything on those pages. So, but yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up episode 2.
Yeah.
So
next week it'll be kind of a weird week. You're shooting USA Nats next week, right?
Yes, sir.
So I'll do a brief episode, not too long, just going over my USA Indoor Nationals, and then I'll be doing, depending if you're still shooting or not, I'll be going over you did, and be maybe a half hour, nothing too crazy.
Yeah, it'll be like a mini episode. I should be done shooting Saturday, and we like to do our recordings on Sundays, so I should be able to. If not, it'll just be Matt for that one, and he'll just cover the little things on the mini. It'll be like a mini episode, I guess that's what we'll call them. But stay tuned, because episode 4 is going to be pretty good. We're going to have our first guest on the pod, so I'm looking forward to that. But
I'm very excited to it. I'll do a post about it the week of. I'm probably going to be doing a big post every Wednesday the week of a guest, and I'll do a brief mention about it next week as well. And if it's a mini episode, I'll go over the final results up to that point. I think next week is the final location for
Mason, Michigan.
So I'll be going over the final results, and I'll also do kind of like a bracket breakdown and give my take on the brackets, because
ooh, we taking bets? We taking bets?
Man. Well, if you're in it, I'm gonna make sure you win.
Yes.
DraftKings, man.
Score.
Bet money on Jacob Miller DraftKings.
Whoa. Save your money. Save your money by Prime. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, we have some pretty exciting things happening and in the works. And stay tuned. And Matt, we'll catch you on the flip side, bud.
Yes, sir. It was a good episode. Look forward to next week.
Yes, let's do it.